Good morning. Good morning. Whew. A year of preparation and we're here. We're excited. I hope you are as well. Amen. We're going to get right into the seminars. And about 4 months ago, I called up Brother Harlan and I said, hey, what do you think about this idea? And he goes, I like it. I said, good, let's do it. So that's the introduction. The title is, as you can see on the screen there, is Who Are You? And it is using your strengths to advance the kingdom. And so, Brother Harlan, without further ado, come on up. We'll get started. I know a couple people just walked in. I'm going to go make sure they have a book.
So, I know you're not going to like this, but we're going to start with a test. So you need a book, and you're like, well, I'm not going to do this, but please do, because it really is going to be important and going to have some interaction. And if you don't do this, then we can't do the interaction. And so what you need to do is you're going to read through this, and if it applies to your personality, and so this is going to be a personality test. And yes, everyone has a personality test. Nobody will fail, right? Everybody will. So just go through and self-confident, yes or no. You can lean over to your spouse or your church member or your kids or whoever is with you and just go through them real quick.
Check all that apply, right?
Yeah, all that apply in all 4 boxes. Okay, so as you do that, I'm going to talk for just a second. So we find that we're doing this, and there's a reason we're doing it. Before we get started, I would like to thank Brother Deaver and the Roseburg Church for choosing such a timely topic. The study of personalities goes all the way back to the great physician Hippocrates, 460 to 370 BC. Known as the father of medicine, he lived during the time of Nehemiah and Malachi. If we put him during a biblical time. So we're going to talk about personalities. And first, we're going to talk about personalities to better understand who we are. Second, to better understand who other people are. Third, to better understand how we are different. So differences. Yep, you got a question?
We do. Are we supposed to be checking these as how we are right now, or how we've been most of our life? Because it's
My suggestion, knowing you asked, how you are most of your life. So if today you're super giddy or super down or whatever, more of a composite. Does that make sense? Any other questions I could answer? Are they making sense? If you have a question, please ask. The young people can do it too if they would like. Do you guys have books? Would they like to do the test?
Do it. Yeah, thank you.
It can be very helpful. I don't know who said yes, who said no.
Thank you, sir.
Yep. You like one? No. Any other questions? So some ways in which we are different. What's an obvious way we're different? And I know you're trying to work and think. So what's an obvious way we're different?
Introverts and extroverts.
Okay, introverts and extroverts. You've seen the material. What's not dealing with personality is a way that we're different. Male, female, pretty obvious, right? How about another one?
Race.
Race, age. I have 2 grandsons living with me. And you think grandsons, you think little. They're 20 and 18. And I walk in whatever room they're in, I feel short. I'm not really super short. I'm about 5'11", but compared to them, 6'2" and 6'3", I'm short. So tall and short, there's all kinds of different things. Did we say nationalities and races?
Yes.
Okay. So it's obvious that there are ways that we're different.
Skinny and normal.
Okay? Those skinny people need to get with the program, right? Let's get with the program. So what are some ways that are not obvious that we're different? So I'm different than a lot of you, and some of you may know, some of you may not. What hand am I raising? I got to check. So one way I'm different than everybody else, I'm directionally challenged. Somebody will say right, and it's like, my right or your right? And Joyce says, yes, he really means that. I'm left-handed. Everyone that's left-handed, raise your hand. Does somebody get a count? 6 or 7 of us. And there's what, 40? So the population of left to right-handed in the world is pretty consistent. Anywhere from 10 to 15%. So I'm guessing we got 40 today, I don't know. We're probably pretty close to that. We're probably close to the 15%. So that's how we're different. One way we're different, and you can't tell how we're different like that. There's another way that we're different, and that is the fact that we are different in personalities. This is kind of our text verse. I am made all things to all men. Paul talked about this, and he's talking about witnessing. But I also want to use it from the standpoint of just relationships for a minute. When we witness, it's clearly an important relationship, but all relationships are important. This implies I am made all things to all men. First of all, I am made, that talks about being able to change. I am made, if you make something from something, you're changing it, right? So Paul is saying that I'm willing to change, I'm willing to apply some things to my life. I made all things to all men. All men. In other words, I change to meet other people's needs, is what he's saying. Their personality. So that implies that Paul does some evaluating when he's around other people. And we know that he does that in order, he talks about when I'm a Jew, or if I'm witnessing to a Jew, he was able to talk, I'm a Jew of the Jews, he says. If he's a Gentile, he wasn't a Gentile, but boy, he knew the law and he knew the things about the Gentiles. Romans 2nd chapter is an excellent chapter in the defense of Gentiles and that they're just like us and they need a Savior just like us. And they have a conscience and God will convict them to know that they need a Savior just like us. Paul says when somebody's poor, I will change my approach, right? So in order to do that, we kind of need to know who we are and we need to kind of know how to evaluate others. So we have chosen, Brother Deaver in the Roseburg Church has chosen personalities to use a way to do that. Now, there are lots of ways we can evaluate who people are. Some personalities, we lay that on top of male-female. For example, we're going to talk about different personalities. We haven't gotten there yet. And there they are. So I'd encourage you to go ahead and write those in. Everybody done with the test? Any questions on the test? We good? So go ahead and write those in up there so you know what they are. So a male who is a melancholy and a female who is a melancholy, because there's male and female differences too, can look a little bit different, but boy, when you talk about the personalities part, they're going to look a lot alike. A choleric and those different things are still going to look a lot alike. But I understand that there will be some subtle differences because of other things. And if you're left-handed, you're going to be totally different. Okay. So, yes. Yeah?
You took it down.
I did what?
You took them down.
Oh, sorry. You guys don't write that fast? Okay. I'm sorry. Thank you for... Please speak up. Now, in dealing with relationships, anytime I am asked to conduct a wedding, to do a marriage ceremony, I always require the couple to go through marriage counseling. One of the things I require of them to do is take a personality test. they're always amazed to know what they are, and it always helps in conflict resolution. I've even had my church do this. We've done this at pastors' retreats in different places. So now some of you may have done different kinds of this kind of personality test. Some of you may have done it by applying colors. Some of you may have done it by applying animal characters. There is a major one that is done in major companies, in companies to help you better understand, and it's the Myers-Briggs. And it breaks it down into 16. And it's way too complicated for the hour and a half that we got, which is hour and 15 minutes. So we picked the one, and this works really well for relationships. Has anyone taken the Myers-Briggs? If you've taken it? There's some of you that work, yeah, at some different companies. So did it help you in your work relationship at all when you took it? Rachel, did you like it? Not? No. How about you?
It helped to know more about some of my coworkers.
Okay. Yeah, it can be helpful. Now, that breaks it down, and so for me, it is almost too much sometimes because you got to know who you are, the two. It takes two major ones for you and the two for the other, and I've taken it also multiple times, but this one I like. Anyway, questions? Did we get them all written? We good? Okay. So now take the one that you have the top score in and put that, we're going to call that your primary personality.
Take your books, rip your page out.
Yeah, take that page out, that one that says blank. We did that on purpose. I know, and some of you are like, oh, can I tear a book? Oh no, you melancholies are like, I can't do it. The cholerics are like, give me 10 pages. What?
We're taking out this chart.
Just
No,
the blank.
the page that says blank.
Blank, this one, not blank, it says that blank.
Somebody else to why.
Okay, yeah, that one. Yes?
One point per check mark?
1 point per check mark. Yep. Now, everybody got the right page to tear out? It says blank on it. We good? Okay. So you write your primary personality score, your secondary score. Now, if you go to the back of the book, and you don't have to, but you can look there, there is the full personality test that has, I don't remember how many questions, but it's a lot of questions. And it's a little bit better about being accurate. The other thing that it does, it has weaknesses and strengths. Not only would we break your primary personality up by the total, the one that you have the most, and your secondary by the one you have least, we'd also break it if you have two personality types. We would also break it up your weaknesses versus your strengths. Let me give you an example. Anytime I've ever tested, I always test as a phlegmatic and a choleric. Now, you know anything about phlegmatics, and we'll talk about this a little bit, is phlegmatics want to do things the easy way. Brother Tom called and said, you want to do it? I said, yes, let's do it. And then about, I don't know, a month later, it seems like 3 months before, he says, okay, let's get started. Part of Brother Tom's personality is a choleric, and he was ready to get going. And part of my personality is a phlegmatic, and I'm like, we got lots of time. Phlegmatics, you don't want to start too soon, right? Because if you put it off, I mean, what I wanted to say is, what if the Lord comes back?
I told him we have 7 years, we're fine.
So, anyway, the other thing though, phlegmatics, easygoing, if you know a phlegmatic, until they're not, right? You push a phlegmatic in a corner, once they take a stand, you're pretty much done, okay? So, just putting things off and doing things the easy way. I also trained as an engineer, and just putting things off and doing it the easy way, that's not how things work very well. And so I adopted the personality as a choleric. So many of you know me, not as a phlegmatic, the guy who puts things off and doesn't take control. Cholerics like to do it their way. Right? Right, Brother Tom?
Amen.
Yeah. Brother Tom has a story. Okay. I gave him permission to tell. And so we like to take control. The phlegmatic is the easy way. The choleric is, if I'm going to do it, and Joyce will tell you, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to control it. Okay? But if I'm not doing it, I don't care. You'll be hard pressed to get me to participate. Some of you are like, I know that guy. So how I know that my natural personality is phlegmatic is when I go to the weaknesses, I test high on the weaknesses. But you can't live that way. And so I have adopted a different way. So some of you, if you have a dual personality, just because you have the higher score, we'd have to go back and look. And we could talk about it. If you'd like to talk later, we can talk about which one. And I could give you a pretty quick indication of which one would be. The other thing we've done in the back of the book, we've done combinations. I just recently came across this information, and it's powerful. So I could be a choleric or a phlegmatic, or I could be a phlegmatic choleric. And if you read those two, they're kind of different. And so which one you put first does matter. Okay, so you've done that. So personality traits. I want to talk about these a little bit. God has made us. So some are like, boy, this sounds too much like psychology. You know, it's not psychology. This is just the observation of human beings, putting them in 4 different categories. And can you believe that? The guy who should have that thing turned around. I cannot believe that. I apologize. I did silence it, sorry. Okay. What was I talking about? Okay. Why we're doing this. So God made us different, and we can observe. We can observe male, female. So we can talk about differences in male, female. We can observe that we're different in different ways, and one of those ways, and what we're going to focus on, is personalities. And so God has made us fearfully, wonderfully. Now, one personality is not better, is not worse than the other, okay? That's important to know. Sometimes there are things about me, how God made me, I wish were different. I always wished I could sing. I cannot sing. Now, yes, I can sing, but if you hear me, you'll say, please don't sing. I can't carry a tune. What was it? I'm like Paul. In jail, I can't find a key and behind a few bars or something like that. That's a bad joke. But anyway, I can't sing. I always wish that I was different. Sometimes we don't appreciate who we are. And when we don't lean into what God has made us, then we can't use it for God's ability. God's made us this way for a reason. And, you know, I'm a phlegmatic and I'm a choleric and I have these personalities. And when I lean into them, I can accomplish some incredible things. But to everything, there is weaknesses and there are strengths. I want to talk about these personalities just a little bit. The other verse, having then gifts or qualities differing according to the grace given to us, we need to lean into those. We need to know who we are to be able to use those personalities and talents to the best of our abilities. So we have here choleric, about power, control, want to control it. Melancholies want it to be right, perfection, hard to move on from something. I am married to a melancholy. She is nothing else. She is all melancholy. And it is good for me to understand that when we're working together, because I just want it done my way. She wants it done the right way, and I read that as her way, but it's the right way because she's a melancholy, right? And there's lots of times I need to step back, and if I let her do it, great attention to detail, melancholies, okay? Sanguine, lots of personality. Overflowing with personality. Life of the party. Phlegmatic, they are about peace. They want peace in their life, and they're often the peacemaker. They want peace in everybody else's life. Now, I don't have time to go through all of them. I want to talk about how we take directions. And this one is so true. Cholerics, my way. I do not take direction. Now, I can do stuff, but I would rather, if it's going to get done, right, Brother Tom?
Yep.
Okay, my way. Melancholies, the right way. And they are passionate about there is a right and there is a wrong. And for melancholies, you will struggle with gray areas. That is going to be tough for you sometimes. The fun way, sanguines, it's got to be fun. Give them something fun to do and they'll be okay. Phlegmatics, the easy way. We've already talked about that. I meant to do this. Can I get you to stand up? All those that are cholerics, please stand. We'll give you your award a little bit later. Okay, cholerics? Okay, good. Okay, if you could be seated. Melancholies? And I know some of you may be multiple things. Okay. Wow. So one thing I noticed, we got two brothers that are already different. That's interesting. Okay. Good to know. Okay. I don't know how we got on one side, so I'm going to say sanguines, and this side's going to stand up. Sanguines?
Oh, no. Just relax, Captain. We're okay.
Okay. And phlegmatics. And I am standing. Did you notice we were pretty evenly divided? There was one group that had a little more, but pretty evenly divided. So an interesting group. So I got to do some fun stuff, and I got to do it the right way, but I still got to do it my way. This is going to be tough, Brother Tom. And then we have needs. So especially you need to identify what your needs are, because if you don't know what you need, you're going to struggle in life. Cholerics. Achievement, sorry. Oh, took my glasses off. I put them in my pocket, okay. Directions. So if you're working with somebody or if you have a family member, achievement, recognizing achievement is a big deal. Giving direction so they know what to do, so the goal is important for cholerics. Getting to the goal is important. Melancholies, order and sensitivity. I think that's pretty obvious. Attention and approval. Phlegmatics, respect and self-worth. And then the last one, they all have flip sides, right? We all have strengths, we all have weaknesses. Choleric can be controlling. Melancholy, insecure. Sanguines, undisciplined. Phlegmatics, reluctant. Okay? Questions, comments?
Our wives are partners with Polly. Disagree with some of our stuff too.
Some of our stuff.
I mean, the
test?
yeah.
Your perceived answers and other people's perceived answers.
Yes.
You know, I really encourage couples to talk about when they do it, and I think you'll find that they line up a lot. Have you and Rachel done it?
Yeah.
So this is.
But there were some things that I said that she said, yeah,
Not really, not so much.
He just said about choleric, and he's not, he's phlegmatic too.
He's phlegmatic. Yeah, he did, but he's.
Me and Brother Harlan are the same.
There's a little bit. Jimmy is a little bit like me in the sense that phlegmatic. If you go through life, very rarely is a phlegmatic always only phlegmatic. Do we have anyone that only tested phlegmatic in here that was really high and nothing else? That is so rare. You'll have people who are straight choleric, straight melancholy, sanguine and phlegmatic, especially phlegmatic. Because you cannot live in life, you cannot hold a job and be a phlegmatic. You'll get fired on day 2. Because the boss will come and say, do this, and he'll give you the directions, and you'll do it totally different. So what do you do? I said, I did it my way. Right? Oh, that's
choleric.
The easy way. I did it the easy way. Why didn't you do it my way? I mean, so almost always what?
Not only that, I don't care.
Exactly, I don't care. And so as you're talking to me explaining, I walk off, right? I tell you what, you cannot make it in life, but there are good qualities of phlegmatic that will get you a long ways. And so you're going to test as a choleric, but that's not your strength. Or that is your strength. That's not your main one.
Right.
Okay, I got to get going. We got so. Okay, here we go. So we've done the score. We've done some of the personality tests. I want to talk about strengths and weaknesses. For every strength, there is always an opposite weakness. One of the things that attracted me to my wife is she's a melancholy. Phlegmatics and cholerics, we are not very well at identifying our feelings. Joyce once told me you wouldn't know a feeling if it came and bit you on the rear. Not really good about identifying our feelings. Now, I'm going to say this because I'm going to run out of time. In the back of the book, there is a feelings chart. Some of us it's hard to identify how we're feeling. I've used this chart many, many times, and it's really good. If you're angry, but there's lots of issues of how you get angry. If you're sad, happy, it's really helpful when we can't. Melancholies, you don't need the feelings chart. You can do 3 feelings charts. Sanguines, you like the positive feelings, but you don't like the negative feelings. So you need that too to help identify those. But so strengths and weaknesses. Attracted to the strengths, but for every strength, Joyce wanting to do it the right way, wanting to make sure it's done. When we plan for a vacation, a trip, 2 days is too much notice for me. 2 weeks isn't even, we're not scratching. She'll make lists, and I'm like, let's just throw a few things in the car and go. I mean, that's not, and so what attracted me to her, the fact that she likes order in her life, because I don't have a lot of order in my life. I do, but it's because of its choleric, because I have to get something done, and I'm about the goal, not as much the process. And so the thing that is interesting is the very thing that I was attracted to her about is the very thing that can drive me crazy. Vice versa. She likes the fact that I'm easygoing, that I can do things spur of the moment. But that's the very thing, right? And so we could go through the whole list, every one of them. So for each one, there is a positive and there is a negative. But here's the thing. Jesus, you read the strengths. Jesus is the strength. Jesus has none of these weaknesses. I'm just going to point out a couple. And there's a verse in Hebrews, and every time I read it, it kind of makes me almost want to laugh. It says this about Jesus. For every high priest is ordained to offer gifts, sacrifices. Wherefore, it is of necessity that this man Jesus have somewhat also to offer. Is that an understatement or what? Jesus had somewhat. Jesus was the perfect. He had the ultimate to offer, right? And so you look at some of these, and you look at Jesus being a choleric, goal-oriented, organized as well. When I read that one, that almost made me laugh. Jesus, the organizer of the church, the most important organization, the world may not consider it, but the most important organization in the world, right? He organized that. And he continues to be the head, the leader of his church. Insists on production. Go ye therefore. You think he insists? So I want to talk about the goal. Jesus began to teach his disciples. This is about 1.5 years into the ministry of Jesus Christ. He starts teaching his disciples, the Son of Man must suffer many things, and be rejected of the elders, and of the chief priests and the scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days raise again. Cholerics are goal-oriented. Jesus came to die. They kept saying, so when are you going to take over your kingdom? When are you? That wasn't the goal at that moment, was it? And he started telling his disciples, and they struggled with grasping that. Jesus had this choleric, and we could go through and look at every one of them, but we don't have time. In dealing with the melancholy, self-sacrificing. Again, a little bit understated, right? He is the ultimate. He had somewhat to sacrifice, right? Somewhat to offer. Sensitive to others. When Jesus therefore saw her, Mary, weeping, and the Jews weeping, which came with her, he groaned. He was troubled. He was touched. I love being a choleric, being a phlegmatic, feelings. I don't experience them as well by myself, but when I see them in others, it touches me. I don't know if that makes sense. If you have my personality, it will make sense. I don't think I've ever cried during a sermon. Now, I know some preachers. Jimmy, have you ever cried during a sermon? Mm-hmm. Okay. So we're a little different in that. There's nothing wrong with that. But when I see somebody that does like a performance or something that is deeply moving, that moves me. And so I tell our melancholies at church, your worship in contact with Jesus helps me have a deep emotional contact with Jesus. Now, when I preach, I have moved people to tears. Sometimes because it's that bad of a sermon. But often because of the content of my sermon. And then that, in turn, moves me. See how personalities work on... Okay, we've got to get going. Self-sacrificing, well, we talked about that. Compassion. I love reading in the Gospels. Jesus was moved with compassion. Therefore, we have a high priest that is touched with our feelings, right? Therefore, come boldly to the throne. He knows how he feels. He knows how we feel. Sing line, be friends easily. we have a friend in Jesus, right? We have a song about that. Doesn't hold grudges. Now, I understand that he is the Son of God and he's God and there's a judgment issue. But look at this sanguine personality in Jesus when he's on the cross doing this ultimate sacrifice, right? And they came to the place, they crucified him there, and he looks down and he says, doesn't hold grudges, Father, forgive them. Now, he doesn't forgive them of their ultimate sin, their sin nature, right? But he doesn't want that charge. That was the plan that him and God the Father had to do. He was doing his goal, and not going to hold a grudge about that. Even to the point, when I'm doing something, when I'm building something or working on something, and I like to build things, that's the engineer part of me. And when my kids were little or my grandkids come, and with my grandkids I've tried to be better, but it's kind of like, hey, can't you see I'm busy here, right? Just leave me alone. And Jesus is on the cross, and the thief, one of them turns to him and basically says, hey, what about me? Would you be upset if Jesus says, hey, I'm a little busy here, right? I'm dying for the sins of the world. And yet, in that moment, he had compassion. Today you will be. Such a melancholy thing that he was willing to do there, the right thing, right? Even self-sacrificing himself. Phlegmatic. Peaceful, agreeable, good administrator, you think? Good under pressure, you think? Just some of those are so understated. Evening was come, day of the resurrection. He goes into them and he says, peace. Their life is chaos. The disciples are like, what has just happened? Day of the resurrection, did I say that right? Not of the crucifixion. And he comes in and he says, don't be so stressed, right? Phlegmatic, peace unto you. As my Father has sent me, so and they're like, we don't want to leave this upper room. He's like, no, peace, it's okay. So we see how Jesus exemplifies all of those. Okay, and each one has weaknesses. So here's the thing about these weaknesses. They make us, and you can read through those, I don't have time, they make us difficult to be around. I have a book. It's an excellent book. How to deal with difficult people. Difficult people in your life. You ever had somebody that just drove you crazy? I'm a fairly easygoing guy, and some of you are like, yeah, right.
I think you are.
I had a church member once. Just one. Now, I have had difficult church members, but they didn't bother me much. I literally had a guy take his Bible, slam it down, slam it on his... It didn't bother me. We had a conversation. I had a lady pretty early in my ministry. I don't know. Anything she said, whew, my temperature. Just something. She had my number. And she got to see, the thing is, others got to see it too, right? Because I didn't always, now I never blew up or anything, but I gave her cute answers in return sometimes that I regret now. But I tell you, I know how I'd like to deal with her. Just something about her and I, oil and water, right? We had different personalities. Now I know part of it was her personality, part of it was the way she worded things. But the weaknesses, and they can make us difficult people. Now, she wasn't, most people, she was only difficult in my life. The same people, the other people heard the same thing. And they're like, we don't get what you're upset about, right? She's difficult because of the way I perceived it. And so I'm not calling her difficult. My personality, I allowed my weaknesses to come out and to the point that they can lead us to sin. And we have to be very careful. And I think James, talking about some of this stuff in our weaknesses, from whence come wars and fightings from among you. He's talking about church people. And come they not hence, even a lust, war in your own members and your own personalities and your own differences and how God made you. Finally, brothers, sisters, whatsoever things are true. So we have a choice on which side. It is a choice if we're going to deal with the positive, we're going to deal with the negative. I like Hebrews 12:15, looking diligently, lest any man fail of the grace of God. The grace of God is getting the things we don't deserve, the good stuff, the positive things. Work with the good stuff. Lest any root of bitterness, negativity spring up and trouble you, thereby many are defiled and overcome. And that's because we dwell on the weaknesses. It is a choice. Okay, I want to talk about introvert, goal-oriented people, and people-oriented people. So this chart it's page 4, and so introvert and extrovert. We'll talk about that first. Now this is on a continuum. If you put Joyce and I together, and I know because I have to do these things, I look like an extrovert. I am not, folks. If you saw me at home, if you saw me around people. At church, I have to talk to people, so I have to be out there. I know, sorry. I have to. I get to. But you understand that. I'm an introvert. Put me next to my wife. She looks like an extrovert, but she's really very introverted. You put us next to our grandson, we look really extroverted. I mean, and he is just and shyness isn't the same. Now, introverted people can be shy, but extroverted people can be shy too. Shyness comes from a fear place, not necessarily a bad fear, but not knowing the circumstances. Extroverted people can have that too. So, introverted versus extroverted, how they look. Introverted, enjoying time. So, one of the things about introverted and extroverted is that we get energized differently in different ways. Extroverts like to be around people. Sanguines like to be around people. And so the cholerics and the sanguines. Now cholerics, they can tolerate, they don't have to be around people. They're pretty self contained, but they're okay with being and can be extroverted. But introverted and extroverted is on a chart. That's what I was trying to say. And there's a group in between, and there's a name for that, and I wrote it down. I don't have it here. I'll look it up. But anyway, some of us can live there in the middle. Some of us can do whatever we need to do because of the jobs we have and that kind of stuff. Okay. Extrovert gains energy and social energy different. Introvert gets recharged usually by themselves, doing something, reading, watching TV, piddling on a job. Extroverts like to spend time with each other, makes quick decisions. Extroverts usually thinks before speaking, unless phlegmatics, but you can't get them to talk anyway, hardly. So can be seen more reserved, can be seen as outgoing, prefers working independently, thrives in team-oriented situations. Introverts process by thinking, and as it processes, sometimes Joyce will say, "What are you thinking?" And I'm like, "I'm not thinking anything," and that is the truth. But sometimes I'm processing. And one of our conflicts is, can be, even though she's an introvert, she's also a female. Females like to communicate, right? Communication and sports. That's where sometimes you overlay them. You still get other differences, male and female. And so as we talk, sometimes something we've learned, she's like, say something, tell me what you're feeling. And I've learned if I'll say, look, give me 10 minutes, give me an hour, let me process, give me a day. Whatever I say, I have to agree to that and come back to it, right? And so, but we're both introverted. You know, the communication part, male and female differences come into play too. So, but there's a process. She likes to process things too, think about them, that kind of stuff. And then you may get a response, you may not. Extroverts, what comes in often goes out, okay? Pretty quick to speak sometimes. Okay, introvert, extrovert, I'm going to go to goal-oriented. Goal-oriented, people-oriented. So goal-oriented are melancholies and cholerics. Phlegmatics and sanguine are people-oriented. Let me give you an example. There are not very many conflicts of the church listed in the New Testament, but it's interesting, two major conflicts, both involve Paul, who is a choleric. Now, when the church was at Antioch, there were certain teachers, Barnabas, and if you go on, there's Saul. It lists 5 people there. The Holy Spirit called Paul and Barnabas to be missionaries, right? And then they go to Jerusalem, and there's this council meeting, and after that, Paul says, let's go on a mission journey. But what's interesting is there becomes this sharp contention. It's sharp, you can feel it. A deacon in our church, we're both choleric, and we both have ideas on how things should be done. And very rarely would we disagree openly. People didn't know it, but they did know it. And I once had another deacon come to me, and there was a disagreement going on that I thought we were both covering and handling well. We weren't upset at each other, just what the end goal was, we had different ideas. And he come and he says, you know, when you and so, this stuff is going on, he says, for the church, it feels like mom and dad's fighting. And it was a good perspective for me, even though we thought we were handling it, and I think we handled it okay. It wasn't like we were out of control or any bad words or anything like that, and we eventually always moved on. But it was kind of fascinating that they could see what I thought we were handling well. And leadership, pastors, you might just remember that sometimes, that it's perceived. So there was this sharp contention, and there we go. Okay, and Paul said to Barnabas, let us go. And Barnabas says, let's take John Mark. John Mark was the guy who went with them originally, and he, about halfway through, he came home, and Paul says, you know, this guy gave up. And Paul says, no. Paul was goal-oriented. I want to go see how the churches are. I don't want to spend my time babysitting John Mark. I want to go see how all these new saved people are. Now, I understand both sides. Both can be right. What's the doctrinal issue here? There is no doctrinal issue. What's the Holy Spirit saying here? I think this is a personality conflict. And Barnabas says, I am going to determine to help John Mark improve his Christian growth. And we can do that on the mission field. And he said, I'm not giving up on John Mark. He takes John Mark, and Paul takes Silas, and they go in their own way. And now, they still become friends, and we see later that there's some interaction between Paul and Barnabas. But especially later, Paul writes to Timothy, and he says, bring John Mark. He is profitable. I think this is Paul's way of saying, you know what? People are important too, right? And so sometimes we need to be careful. We can get so goal-oriented and forget about people, and vice versa. And I have so much more I want to say, but I can't because I don't have time. Here's the problem with goal-oriented. It can become legalism. People-oriented can play favoritism. And we need to be careful about that. Paul, the other conflict I talked about, Paul was, Peter, Antioch, remember it listed those people up there that was at Antioch, and Barnabas and Paul was there. Peter, Acts tells us, he goes up there. And Peter had came and was starting, the Jews said, you know, Gentiles have to be circumcised and all this. And Paul said, look, this is a problem. I was slid into his face. He withdrew and separated himself. And the Gentiles at Antioch, that was a Gentile mostly church. And it became an issue to the extent that Barnabas started getting sucked into this. Barnabas is phlegmatic and, you know, kind of, very people-oriented. And so it was easy for him to get sucked into that. And then Peter writes, obviously he didn't hold a grudge. Peter writes, our beloved brother Paul, according to the wisdom given unto him, hath written unto you. And that included the book of Galatians, which is one of the first books written to the churches. So Peter would have known about that book and about Paul writing about that, feelings chart. There's so much more I can talk, but I'm only supposed to do half, and Brother Tom's supposed to do the other half. My goal was to give you some tools, personalities, to evaluate others, to evaluate yourself, so that then we can come together. And even though if you can't always say, okay, I am going to become who you are, right? I can't become who Joyce is. I will never be a melancholy. And there's nothing wrong with melancholy, it's just not who I am. But sometimes when I do something and we get together and I'll say this or that, and her reaction is totally different than what my personality would be, if I stop and say, okay, she's reacting like she should because of who she is, it can so much move us along. Now sometimes it's just a lot more funner to fight, right? Just to, you're wrong, I'm right. But when you stop and pause, in all relationships, parents, children, work, church, all husbands and wives, it is a powerful tool. And what did David say? I am wonderfully made. God has made us this way. Use it. Take those qualities and use the gifts, the qualities that God has used us to further the kingdom. Last point, 2 Corinthians 5th chapter. God, through Jesus, has reconciled the world. Then he has given us the ministry of reconciliation. And how can I reconcile the world, bring the world to God for reconciliation if I'm not willing to consider who they are and how I deal with them as a person? Thank you. Go, Tom. Sorry.
3-minute break, and be right back in here, and we'll get started. Stretch your legs, do what you need to do. You're good. Oh, I'm going to be like that.
He expected more, Brother Harlan. He expected it would be longer.